Hello, everyone, and thank you for coming along to this session on how to build a high-speed north. I'm Hannah Miller, political correspondent at ITV Granada, and we're joined today by Metro Mayor Steve Rotherham, by Doug OKavi, Lorna Pimlott, and I'm hoping, have we lost a guest already? Hang on. Well, first of all, let's get started. It feels like we've spoken a lot about high-speed to Northern Powerhouse rail, high-speed infrastructure across the north. And it's something that gets talked about a lot, but perhaps many people will feel that they aren't entirely sure exactly when this will happen. We've got Tim Wood back. Excellent. We've got Tim Wood as well.
It just froze.
Disappeared from our screens. So we're going to be looking at this session at the importance of high-speed rail to the future of the Northern Powerhouse Rail HS2, and the importance of the connectivity between those big projects with local transport networks as well. So you can send in your questions about and tell us what you would like to see from these projects, and of course we've got an excellent selection of guests lined up to set out their vision as well. We'll come first of all to Metro Mayor Steve Rotherham. He is the Metro Mayor of Liverpool City Region since May 2017, a former MP for Liverpool Walton, who began his career serving as a councillor in Liverpool as well. Steve, we'll hand over to you for your opening thoughts.
Thanks, Hannah. Interesting biography there. I think there are other things I've also done in my life, but never mind. You mentioned, Hannah, about sort of west-east connectivity, and that is really important to us, but it has to form part of a fully integrated and interconnected transport system that connects directly into cities that it serves. And crucially, it has to facilitate the smooth transport of passengers to a network of high quality local transport hubs. And that's, I think, what you were alluding to in that introduction. For us, that includes obviously rail. For others, it'll include tram. For all of us, it'll be bus, active travel. And then in our case, it'll be ferries across the Mersey as well. And I've said that in the Liverpool City region, I want to create a London style integrated transport system that's actually fit for the 21st century, because we haven't at the moment, and we're building, we haven't delivered at this moment in time £500 million worth of brand new rolling stock for our Mersey rail network, but that needs to be part of the whole passenger experience. And so high quality, easy to use interchange facilities are vital to getting passengers to transfer from the car to public transport, which obviously helps the environment and the climate and the air quality too. And all of that joining up of those great northern cities isn't just about speeding up the movement of people. We talk about this a lot, high speed. Actually, it's also about releasing capacity on existing lines and services and allowing more movement of freight onto rail. And that's really important to the Port of Liverpool, which is actually in Sefton. But for our area, in a post-pandemic and post-Brexit world, that will be even more important to UK PLC, because it provides the connections that facilitate international growth through, our seaport, but also connecting them up to our airports also. So it's really important that Northern Powerhouse Rail is developed quickly, that links to HS2, and that will release the economic growth and the employment opportunities in our area. And there will be many, many jobs, we know, in apprenticeships and construction, for instance, in the first phases, but further jobs when it comes to the actual service. And we need all this to be an enabler for building back better. We have to ensure that it contributes to those net zero carbon targets, and both in the way that it's constructed, but in the way it's operated as well, and be sustainable over an extended period. So at that, Hannah, I'll hand back over, and I'm certain that there'll be questions in which I can tease out lots more of the exciting projects in the Liverpool City region that connect into it.
I'm sure there are. I can already see some of the questions coming in, and a reminder to people who are watching that the hashtag is TFN20 as well. I'll hand over now to Doug OKavi, a civil engineer awarded the CBE for his contributions to civil engineering. Of course, many people will know him as the chair of the HS2 Review Committee, which published its final report in February this year. He previously served as chair of both Crossrail and HS2, and has also been involved in the development of mass transit systems in Hong Kong. Doug, over to you. I think you're still muted, Doug. There we go.
Good, sorry about that. Well, good morning, everybody, and thanks very much, Hannah, for your introduction. Like Steve, I was a bit amused by some of it because I've done a little bit more than you've said. But as you say, I'm best known for the OKavi review. And I think it might be just worth going back over what the outcomes were. And I had a very strong panel, including John Cridland on it. So the North was well represented in all their thoughts. But when we started it, most of the debates really projected something. On the one hand, the whole of HS2 should be cancelled, and on the other hand, it should proceed at any cost. And obviously, there was evidence for that, when you looked at it, there was a different nuance to the whole thing. We gave the Prime Minister our thoughts and said the whole of HS2 should proceed, but it was largely driven by the southern section to actually get that started, because the notice to proceed was due. And that was really driven by 4 factors. One, £9 billion had already been spent, and the opportunity to recover any of that was minimal. The land and property and communities along the route had been blighted for many years, and the construction industry was in a very fragile position. And had it been cancelled, it would have done tremendous harm to the supply chain across the whole of UK and the construction industry in general. Also, the West Coast Main Line between London and Rugby was operating beyond capacity and hindering a reasonable service and a timely service for passengers and freight to the north. In addition to phase 1, though, which was the one that the bill had been through Parliament and passed, we strongly recommended to government that the whole of the Y network of HS2 was built, and that it was necessary to support the Midlands of the North for better connectivity. However, there was sufficient evidence that the whole of HS2 was being planned and designed on a gold-plated standard basis, and that no serious consideration to how it would be integrated into the network, recognising Network Rail's planned upgrades for the Transpennine upgrade, the Northern Powerhouse Railway and the Midland Engine. There was also concern that the eastern leg of HS2 would not be in service for another 20 years. Therefore, the review recommended that an integrated rail plan be developed along with an integrated investment plan. That would be hopefully bringing progressive improvement to the North rather than the big bang approach in 20 odd years' time, if the thing remained on time. So therefore, I was very pleased that government took up those recommendations and asked the National Infrastructure Commission to put together their opinions and views on the integrated rail plan and which priorities took place. And I understand that's going to be, actually a report's going to be published within the next few days. Likewise, as the Minister's already stated, the integrated rail plan will come out next year. And I believe that that will allow a lot more projects to be considered with proper prices being put on them and the priorities being given. And lastly, we advised that the whole of those works be several hybrid bills rather than one hybrid bill that was originally envisaged, which would have been the biggest hybrid bill government have ever seen. And bearing in mind that HS1 or phase one, the bill was the first one to be received by Parliament electronically, because the actual weight of the documents was 250 kilos for one edition of the bill. So if we'd have continued as one bill for the whole of the rest of phase two, I think this would have been a real problem, and therefore it was broken up. The thing I'm also pleased about is the revisions to the Green Book by Treasury, because I think now there's hope that we can get the economic case and the strategic case aligned properly, and proper consideration being given to agglomeration and the growth that rail and connectivity generates, which I think must almost certainly, if it's adopted in the right way, will do much to improve the opportunities for the North, and certainly put them on an equal footing with the North with all these transport projects. Thanks, Hannah.
Thank you very much. There's lots to talk about there for sure. I'll hand over now to Lorna Pimlott, who joined HS2 in April 2017 as its sponsorship director for phase two. Lorna, over to you.
Thank you. And thank you for inviting me to join your panel today. So as we've heard from many of the speakers this morning, the challenges that we have faced this year have brought significant uncertainty, both with COVID and with Brexit. And some very difficult decisions have already had to be made this year, and I'm sure there will be further yet to be made. We feel that HS2 has a real opportunity to boost the economy, particularly with jobs creation and training and apprenticeships. Many of the aspects we've heard the Minister also discuss this morning. More than 10% of all jobs in the UK are in the construction and engineering sectors. And therefore HS2 and NPR has a really important role to contribute to ensuring the stability of those jobs going forward over current years. In phase one, which is the section of the railway from London to Birmingham, we've already awarded more than £12 billion of contracts. And 2/3 of those contracts have been to small and medium-sized enterprises. And of those, 98% have gone to UK companies. Over the duration of the delivery of HS2, we're forecasting more than 400,000 contracts to the supply chain, ranging from concrete to catering, ecological to electricians, and trains to track. We've already got more than 13,000 jobs supporting HS2 currently, and at our peak, that's likely to raise to around 30,000. And with that, we are investing in our people, training and upskilling, and importantly, apprenticeships, and delivering thousands of future apprenticeships. So at this time of uncertainty, what HS2 is contributing is jobs creation, but very importantly, consistency and confidence in the sector and its rebuilding. Government has already been clear that phase one is just the start of joining up the economic regions across the UK, and that they're fully committed to delivering and realising all the benefits that HS2 can deliver. For phase 2A, which is the section of the route from Birmingham up to Crewe, it's actually got its third reading in Parliament today, and we are approaching the conclusion of its parliamentary passage, which means we are looking to get our royal assent early next year, and that will allow us to move from parliamentary passage through to delivery and then through to construction. For phase 2B, We received our instruction in March of this year to deliver the Western Leg bill, and the Western Leg will take us from Crewe up to Manchester. And we've just concluded its second design refinement consultation on Friday for that. This part of the route is essential to provide the connectivity for future NPR services. And the integration with NPR and also the other key investment rail projects across the North and the Midlands is key to the purpose of the integrated rail plan. We shall be hearing over recent weeks and months the outcome of that from the National Infrastructure Commission, the Infrastructure Projects Authority and the department, but HS2 has a central and key role within that plan. It's also really positive to see the support both local authorities and leaders have given the development of the plan to ensure that we maximise the realisation of those benefits, not just for HS2, but also for NPR. There's a real recognition that investment in infrastructure will power the resurgence and the recovery of our economy and will indeed ensure we have a big role to play in building back better. So to conclude therefore, transport has a big prize to give to the country and to the recovery. With by the middle of this century, HS2 providing billions of additional travel miles, importantly, low carbon travel miles to our rail system, supporting our net zero carbon economy. Importantly, focusing on getting the cars and the lorries off our roads. The economic impact is also significant, with HS2 supporting the growth strategies that each of the cities and regions have been developing, which are forecasting up to 500,000 new jobs, new homes, and the resurgence in our cities and towns. Make no mistake, the big benefits of HS2 sit with the North and the Midlands. And if we add in NPR and Midland Connect, the benefits are even greater. So HS2 is making a big contribution at this time of recovery for our jobs and our confidence in our markets. We've never been about just building a railway, and we're here to really help build the UK's future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lorna. And finally, over to Tim Wood, who is the Northern Powerhouse Rail Director at Transport for the North. Tim, over to you.
Thank you for that introduction, Hannah. I'm absolutely delighted to be here as part of the panel for Transport for the North's annual conference, which I hope we'll be able to do in person next year. It is fair to say we stand at an important moment in the North's history. The steps we take over the next few years will help shape our journey for decades to come. And high-speed rail in the North has a pivotal part to play for our future. Northern Powerhouse Rail and HS2 delivered in full will transform the North's rail network in terms of connectivity, capacity, and efficiency to unlock the region's economic potential. Journey times between towns and cities will be significantly reduced, enabling Northerners to get greater access to employment, leisure and education opportunities. As well as this, high-speed rail mega projects have the potential to regenerate city and town centres by attracting businesses and investment, leading to exponential growth and a better quality of life for the people right the way across the North. By building and upgrading railway lines to modern, fast and resilient infrastructure, services will become commonplace in our region, replacing the unfit for purpose services currently offered to passengers. Through this, more commuters will have a better choice of road over rail, helping the environment by removing thousands of car trips from the region's road network every day. So building NPR equates to 64,000 car journeys per day, not happening. And it's another important point to raise. High-speed rail in conjunction with local transport has the potential to offer a seamless carbon-friendly means of travel for passengers, bringing that active travel in, where we walk to the station or we cycle to the station, really making sure that we can keep ourselves fit as a community. And we must ensure that if commuters goes from Manchester to Sheffield, for instance, there is capacity to catch a bus or a tram to their final destination, or as I said, just hop on their bike and use the cycle lanes available. But arguably, more than that, it's the economic, infrastructure and environmental benefits. High-speed rail has the potential to be the catalyst for social change, bringing tangible benefits to the people right the way across the north of England. Important decisions on rail schemes are approaching, with the National Infrastructure Commission's Rail Needs Assessment due to conclude imminently. This will inform us of the government's economic strategy coming out, which is the Integrated Rail Plan, and that's due for publication in 2020, although we are hearing now it's going to slip into next year. What we must see is that long-term sustainable pipeline of infrastructure projects for the north, and that must include both NPR and HS2 in full to deliver the full ambition to transform the north of England. The delivery of both schemes needs to be accelerated as much as possible, now more so than ever, due to the economic shock, of course, caused by COVID-19. To truly show commitment to the levelling up agenda, the government needs to support the North's ambitious plans for rail infrastructure in the region. Then, and only then, will we start to close that north-south economic chasm and see it narrow. Thank you, Hannah.
Thank you very much to all of you. We've had plenty of questions coming in. I'm going to start, we've had a number on kind of connectivity between these HS2 and Northern Powerhouse Rail, how they connect with getting people to their sort of onward destinations. Kevin said there are very few stations, hence very roundabout links other than city centre to city centre. We've had people asking, how do we accelerate the upgrade and refurbishment of other stations that are essentially feeders to the NPR HS2 network, and the model of doing this being about competing for funding between different sort of smaller stations. How can everyone come together basically to secure the complementary funding to HS2 and NPR to make sure that the whole system works as one? Should we start with you, Doug? You're still on mute. If you can, it's just on the bottom left. There we go.
Yeah, sorry.
There we go.
I have to adjust the screen. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a very valid question, and that was really why the review was very concerned that you didn't just forge ahead with a high-speed line, city centre to city centre, with total disregard to the local transport, and that's why we recommended the integrated rail plan. And my understanding, although I haven't seen it, is that the NICE have taken all this into consideration. And I think, as both Steve and Tim have said earlier on, that one of the most important things is to get the east-west connectivity right and work in conjunction with HS2 coming up from the Midlands. And there is need to look at the individual services, and there are a lot of small projects that will need to be done to upgrade it and make HS2 and the Northern Powerhouse as efficient as they hope to be.
Steve, do you want to come in on that?
Yeah, HS2, don't forget, I'll be a bit parochial, Anna, you'll be surprised to hear. It didn't include Liverpool when it was first envisaged. It went to Manchester as if, you know, Manchester is the the north, and it's not. As the likes of Liverpool, the Port of Liverpool, have become much more strategically important to UK PLC, then that interconnectivity has become more important to us all. And that's why I mentioned the west-east connectivity as well as the north-south connectivity. Both of them are really important to genuine levelling up. I know the government uses it and bandies this around as if it's something that is happening. Well, it's not, but it could do. And if you decrease the time it takes to get between northern points and London, but also by doing that, you get the benefit of the great northern cities also being able to be joined up, then that starts to stack up economically. And what was just being said earlier about the Green Book, again, this is probably jargon to some people, but that Green Book methodology has held us back for probably decades, if not generations. And if it includes an opportunity for us to genuinely level up by including things like social deprivation instead of wages or land value uplift, how about environmental considerations, all of them things, we might be able to get the business case to a better standard so that it can genuinely compete with southern projects, and that'll be good for us as well. But that connectivity piece is the essential role, I think, of both of these happening as soon as they possibly can.
Thanks, Steve. Just to pick up on the point there about the Green Book, which is about, as you say, how the Treasury measure which projects to invest in when there are different competing projects to look at. We had a question from Chris Longley, which I'm going to direct towards Tim. He says, will the changes to the Green Book allow Northern Powerhouse Rail to be appraised as a single project or programme, or will small segments of it still be expected to be justified separately?
Hannah, if you just let me, I'd just like to come back on the last question and then I'll answer.
That's fine.
So let's be absolutely clear here. This is the key project in the north of England to open up the capacity and connectivity from east to west. We've waited decades for this investment in Northern Powerhouse Rail, and we know it's coming. And how do we know it's coming? We've started. We've already started the evaluation works on new stations at Barnsley, Dearne Valley and Rotherham Mainline. Really important pieces of work. You're going to see us out on the track at the end of February next year. That is the kind of commitment that we wanted to see. And we also wanted to see the investment coming out of the comprehensive spending review. So we've got a year rollover, another £75 million as a development fund that the Transport for the North can draw down on. Plus potentially a little further money. But of course, we need to agree our programme. And what I want to make sure is that we deliver this as quickly as possible, as seamlessly as possible, and absolutely tie in with HS2. So when it comes around to our business case, certainly changes in the Green Book have been vital for us, particularly now looking at a longer appraisal period. I cannot believe that we have to design structures to last 125 years, and yet we've only got an appraisal period for 60. So if you imagine some of the Victorian infrastructure that we have at the moment has been down nearly 200 years. So the first passenger train into City 1 ran between the great cities of Liverpool and Manchester back in 1830. And I think for us, we're still using that infrastructure. As a matter of fact, I think some of us up in the north do definitely feel we're using it when we have connectivity between Bradford and Leeds, just literally 8 miles, taking nearly half an hour on a train. That just cannot be right for 500,000 people in Bradford to be able to travel around and see that real economic growth. So the Green Book, very much, we want to focus on the strategic reason as to why you would build Northern Powerhouse Rail, as opposed to the BCRs, because the BCRs will never be good in the north of England because we haven't got the economic might and we haven't had the investment that the Southeast has had. I've always said, and Barry, our chief exec, always said, this country is flying around on one engine on this plane, and it's a Southeast engine. We need to put that engine on the other side of the plane, the northern engine, and absolutely turbocharge the economy, because this government is never going to see a levelling up until we start to really get to grips with big investment that we need, that we clearly articulated in our strategic transport plan, the 30-year vision, the only subnational transport body that put one out there, and very clear what needs to be done. It's not just rail, it's smart ticketing, it's roads and highways work, so it covers all modes of transport and that active travel piece as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim. A question for Laura. I'm going to sort of combine two questions for you, Lorna. One is less about the technical side of HS2, more about the politics, from Stella, who says, how can we better emphasise the importance of HS2 to northern transport? There are a lot of people who think that this is still about business travellers getting to London quicker. Does HS2 still have work to do on that, and how do you do that? And then a sort of second follow-up to that, Lancashire, especially Lancaster, seems underserved by HS2. What do you say to people there about what HS2 offers them?
Okay, thank you for that, Hannah. Okay, so I'll take on the two areas that you've shared. So with regards to from a sort of political perspective, HS2 continues to make the significant contribution to jobs, and those are jobs across the UK. Those are not jobs in one region. Excuse me. So that, you know, the £12 billion of contracts are being given to businesses across the UK. So there's far more to HS2 than building the railway and where the railway goes. This is much more about the economic case for HS2. Your second question around Lancaster, specifically, and clearly our western leg does run up from sort of Preston and is extended up to Scotland with the service. We are working closely with the department and continue to do that. But with regards to any decision on you know where the railway is serving, that is really not for HS2. That decision is for the department and for ministers. But again, we would say the benefits for HS2 are by and large delivered in the North and the Midlands. They are not delivered in the Southeast, even though the railway starts from London. And I think that would probably be my quick response. Thanks, Hannah.
Thank you. And another question on HS2, particularly, rumours circulating that the eastern leg will be cancelled up to Leeds. I think people want to know kind of what progress there is on that phase in particular. What impact would it have if HS2 didn't go to Leeds? We'll start with you, Tim, and then move on to Lorna.
Thank you. I think just going back to the last question, so I am a Lancastrian. We absolutely would like to see in the hour an HS2 service coming into Lancaster, and particularly with the Eden project now starting to wind itself up at Morecambe. That would be a real catalyst for this area, thousands of jobs and a big boom. And of course, we want to make sure that what happened in Cornwall with the Eden project happens up here in the northwest of England. So it's very important that we see. And I think, you know, for us, it's important as well that we sort of see HS2, particularly with the touch points that are being built and their infrastructure. We rely on that for around 80 kilometres. So our point of view is quite simple. We expect HS2 to be built in full, and therefore we can build our network off that and deliver to the people that real connectivity. The other piece as well is we're always saying about that connection with London. Actually, I always look at it the other way. It's London's connection to the north of England. Bring those big businesses up here in the north to enable them to grow and develop. And of course, they've then got their connectivity back with maybe their central office down in London. It's important that that connectivity we have.
Lorna?
Yes, thank you. So it's really not my place to make any sort of give any indication with regards to the eastern leg and what the integrated rail plan and the NIC pieces of work will actually opine on. What I will say is that the 2B route that has been developed is the full Y. And that, you know, we are continuing to be committed to delivering that full Y, and we're working closely with our stakeholders. And we also will wait to early in the new year to hear what the integrated rails plan advice is on what we will be doing at the eastern leg, but we continue to be committed to the whole route.
Doug, how crucial do you believe that eastern leg to be?
I think Tim's highlighted it. Without the eastern leg, the Northern Powerhouse Railway suffers greatly, because there's, if memory serves me right, there's 80 kilometres of shared track on that route, which is of major importance. But as to whether or not the NIC are recommending that, I have no idea. I mean, all that I would say is the review was very strong. It made the commitment to government that it must recommit to the whole of the Y, which is the whole of 2B. There may be, it needed some adjustments, and that would be done obviously during the design and planning phase before it went into a bill. But it's absolutely crucial it is built.
Thank you. I'm going to come to Steve. We've had a question about the Network Rail budget has been cut by £1 billion. The minister denies that to some extent, but asking given that cut to kind of other rail services, is it still acceptable to be spending so much on HS2 in your view?
Well, there's a headline for you, Hannah. Minister denies cuts to budget. Of course, governments always push money around. They call it repurposing, don't they? So it will be somewhere, that budget line, it'll already have been either reallocated, or it'll be a rehash of announcements that have already been made. So the quantum is the important thing, isn't it? How it's split up is vital to areas, but also we need the government to recognise that it has to do more outside of the big fancy projects, your HS2s and your Northern Powerhouse Rail. It still needs the interconnectivity between different areas to be upgraded, because they're the logjams that you're getting in Manchester, for instance, that caused Northern's franchise so many problems, and are still happening to delay passengers, although some of that's been alleviated because of COVID. So we need that investment, but it can't be just about city to city, the intercity stuff. It has to be intracity, so it also stuff within locales. And again, being parochial in the Liverpool City region, we've got ambitious projects to do things here, but we can't do them in isolation. We need to work in partnership with central government. And that's why it's so important for us to keep the pressure on. And all of the budget cannot be sucked into those huge projects, as important as they are, as I say, to UK PLC.
Thanks. We've had quite a few questions about the interconnectivity of NPR and HS2 around Manchester Piccadilly. Trevor asks, can we see a guarantee that they will be integrated at Piccadilly through with underground platforms? That he says the cost of an underground station would be offset by the huge increase in capacity, which helps all other issues. Tim.
So HS2 and NPR are inseparable at Manchester, with the services coming up from both Birmingham and London, and us sharing the track as we come up through past the new station at Manchester Airport and then into Manchester Piccadilly. There is a lot of work ongoing currently, looking at a potential underground option, and also further development work on the surface option. So we await now that work to be completed, and then we will look at the evidence with our partners and our board members before the board ultimately make a decision on that, and then we move forward in terms of our messaging to government that the board has continued to speak with one voice, and particularly in this area. I think the other key bit to say as well is Northern Powerhouse Rail, there are 7 major corridors plus our hub stations. We are down to single option on quite a few of those. We will complete with a full sift later on into the new year. But for us, we are not too far off from agreeing now the final preferred way forward for our members to approve at our board meeting coming up early in the new year.
Doug, would you like to talk about that connectivity around Manchester as well? And we've also had people pointing out that that it's important that the MPR network goes through Bradford as well.
Well, obviously, as Tim says, it's vital that there is proper connectivity between the Northern Powerhouse Rail and HS2. I'm aware on the outside that government and Manchester are in heavy discussions on whether it's a surface station or an underground station. I think we've got to get the optimum solution, because as Steve says, we can't plough all the money into one project at the expense of another. So I think we've got to get a rational solution to that, but still have the proper connectivity. As for Bradford, that is a key place, and Susan Henshaw, when we had the review, made clear the needs for Bradford, as did Leeds. And I think that there is consideration that the service to Bradford needs to be properly recognised with the volume of people there. And that's again, something I hope will come out in the integrated rail plan.
Thank you. And that brings me neatly onto what was going to be my final question. We've had a lot in, but one that came in much earlier. What would be the implications of a delay to the integrated rail plan? I'll come to you, Steve. If that's delayed, what would the implications be?
You're probably better asking the experts in the field, but of course, any delay means that projects won't be delivered within the proposed timescales, and we need stuff to be happening now. Hannah, do you know what I'm sick of? I'm sick of people talking about what's going to happen in 2035. I know we need to plan for long term, but people need jobs today and they'll need them tomorrow, and we need stuff to be happening as soon as possible. And I know that earlier in the conversation about HS2, Lorna was talking about £12 billion being spent so far. And I'd like to see a heat map of where the distribution is, because out of that 12 billion, I'd be surprised if much of that has ended up in the Liverpool City region, but hopefully Lorna will prove me wrong on that one. So we do, and the other way that they could have done it, of course, if they're really concerned about levelling up, and if they genuinely believe that these legs are going to be completed, get the HS2 hybrid bill through that says you can put a spade in the ground from Liverpool, and I'll genuinely believe it, and it'll connect up then via Warrington into the Delta and then to Manchester. I'll believe it when spades are in the ground in my area, but we need to accelerate stuff, and hopefully through this integrated plan, and also the Northern Transport Acceleration Council that Grant Shapps is heading up, we'll see a bit of impetus being put into them.
There's a challenge for you, Lorna, sorry, I keep calling you Laura, and you're definitely called Lorna, and that's the challenge for you there. And yeah, if there are further delays to plans, finally, what would it mean for you?
Yeah, so Steve's absolutely right. I mean, we, as I shared, have been instructed to develop a Western Leg bill. which we were instructed on in March. And the delivery for that to be deposited is Q1 22. Now, the integrated rail plan may well have an outcome that affects the development of that, and therefore we would obviously have to incorporate that. So there's no doubt that delaying the integrated rail plan will have implications for all sorts of different projects across the North and the Midlands. I will take the promise that I will come back to you, Steve, on the heat map. Very happy to do that. Actually, very clear that the benefits are being shared, and those contracts are awarded across the UK. So I'm very happy to do that, though I haven't got that information now.
Thank you very much. That feels like we've reached a neat conclusion there. Thank you, all of you, for coming along and speaking. Thank you to everyone who's been listening and sending in questions.